Now you might be wondering why I have this ancient phone here in my hand. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. You see, Lenovo was one of the most well-known smartphone brands a couple of years ago, and now you barely hear about them. So I thought it would be like an interesting experience to take a look back and see what went wrong. Kind of a rise and fall of Lenovo. Now I want to emphasize that when I say fall of Lenovo, I don't mean that they are completely gone. Obviously, Motorola is Lenovo's brand and they are doing some amazing stuff. But I think we can both agree that they're not doing so well as they did a couple of years ago, right? So let's just take a look back for about 5 to 7 years and see what happened. I want to start off by giving an example of this phone right here. This is a phone that I bought when I was still in college. This is the Lenovo P780, one among the two most popular models they ever released in the mid-range category. The other one was the Lenovo A6000, which was known for its sleek design and high-performance internals at that time. This was the other fatter, uglier cousin. It was less popular than the A6000, but it has a bigger battery, and that's why I went for it. It was released back in 2013, and it had a 4000 mAh battery inside it. So that was pretty unheard of at the moment, and everyone was pretty shocked and surprised to see such a huge battery in a phone. I was most of all happy because I'm a power user and I use the phone a lot. So this phone would practically last forever and I loved it. No other phone in this price tag would really offer you such a high quality internals. And that price tag was about 17,000 rupees. I know it's a pretty huge price tag for now, but back then it was actually reasonable because every other phone, including LG's lesser popular G series phones, they would come no less than 30,000 rupees. So this was actually a very reasonable cost to pay for this kind of internals. Man, it had two giant mini SIM slots. Can you remember that? Nowadays we have nano SIMs. These are not even nano SIMs. These are actual mini SIMs. You know, the full-size SIM cards? They are called mini SIMs. And the battery was so huge and heavy that despite having a removable back, they had to put in extra screws so that it wouldn't fall off on its own. Crazy. Now this was around the time where Lenovo was still experimenting with different things. Like they were launching all kinds of phones. In fact, this was a phone they launched in partnership with Gameloft, I think. It had Asphalt 7 and other games built in. In case you didn't know, Asphalt 7 was actually a paid game back in the day. Asphalt 8 and everything onwards is free, but Asphalt 7 was paid. But I was really pumped that Asphalt 7 came built in and no one else really had it at the time because it was a paid game, right? This was all great, but the price tag was still a bit too high. Not a lot of people were going for this phone. I mean, it still had 1 GB of RAM and 8 GB of internal storage, a 720p display, and it was good but not great. So they had to reduce the price tags even more or introduce some features that would really make their phones that much more appealing. Introduction of new features was not that easy back then because there were no actual new technology, so they opted to drop the price by cutting corners here and there. That's when we started seeing the K series of phones. If you remember, circa 2015 we saw the Lenovo K3 Note, which, if you know, in India it was a huge deal. For just 10,000 rupees they offered so much hardware that phones like this were put to shame. A sleek design, a huge battery and a pretty competent MediaTek processor. Everything else came in the box and it had great cameras too. Lenovo had the worst cameras. In fact, this one has a VGA front camera. They improved those things a lot and obviously they sold like hotcakes. Everyone was talking about Lenovo and they were the biggest thing to happen for the budget smartphone market. And of course after that Xiaomi came along and completely disrupted the market with their 5% profit margin. That means that they could offer exceptional quality hardware like Qualcomm Snapdragon processors, which were really expensive for manufacturers. But I don't think that's the real reason why Lenovo phones started taking a downfall. You see, the K3 Note, for example, it was a very popular phone, but it had that typical popular phone syndrome. What I mean by that is a company tries to make a phone popular by giving it for a very less price, but the corners cut by the phone will not be apparent for the users until they use it for a long time. And then it leaves a bad impression which was so horrible that they don't want to go for that phone again. Like with the K3 Note, it had a very high SAR value, meaning that 1.59 out of 1.6. That's pretty high and it's not really safe to be used for a prolonged time, and also the radiation emitted by the phone drastically impacts its battery health, meaning that the more radiation your phone emits, the faster the battery can deteriorate. That was just one of the issues, and there were many other problems with the software updates and stuff. So down the line, people really started having a bad impression of Lenovo. Same thing happened with other companies like You. You remember that company? It was powered by CyanogenMod. They were popularly known for their first ever phone, the You Eureka. But that phone was notorious for its heating issues, and that basically killed every other phone that came up after that. And the problem is, even though Lenovo received a lot of backlash and received a lot of negative comments, they didn't seem to care too much. They continued on with their strategy of introducing good hardware, for lesser cost. Sure, they did see some success after a while, like their Lenovo A6000 series. That was a pretty popular phone. I haven't used it too much, but I've known my friends who had it who spoke very highly of it, and I agree. For just the cost of around 6 or 7,000 rupees, it had a great amount of internals in it. But of course, that wouldn't last very long because Xiaomi would then double down on their content marketing strategy and introduce amazing phones with, like I mentioned, much better internals, and they would offer a quality of hardware not seen by Lenovo before. Like unlike Lenovo, Xiaomi was not really cutting corners in their phones. They were simply reducing their profit margin so that they can give the phone at a competent cost. While companies like Lenovo were still trying to make profit by giving a phone at a lesser cost and cutting corners wherever they can. That only works for a certain while until it backfires, and that's exactly what happened. And they have kind of realized it as well. When was the last time you saw a major smartphone with the Lenovo brand name on it? Even if you go to their website now, if under smartphone section, you'll just see all Motorola phones. They are trying to double down on the Motorola brand name and try to push out some great products and hopefully make a profit. Yeah, comparatively, the Motorola phones are actually doing really well. Their folding phone has seen some amount of success, even though it's not the smash hit wonder everyone was thinking it would be. But yeah, Lenovo has, at least for the time being, stopped worrying about what they'll do with their own brand name and their own phones. And it's kind of sad. They started off with such an ambitious mission. Their tagline is "for those who do." But the problem was, even if they say that they used to make phones for the practical people, I don't think they meant it. For instance, back in the day, rooting your phone was still a major deal. If you don't know what rooting your phone is, it's basically an act of unlocking certain permissions so that you can access directories in your phone that the manufacturer didn't intend you to access. I was big on rooting your phone and installing custom ROMs and stuff. I used to do that all the time. And up until then, I only had Samsung phones. They supported that completely without any issues. But this was the first and the only phone that I had that came with so many issues with their bootloader and the kernel. You see, Lenovo is using something called ROW, or Rest of World ROMs. What this means is that it's a modified version of the Chinese ROM, which doesn't exactly work perfectly outside of China. So if you want to install anything on this phone other than what they release themselves, you're pretty much out of luck because one or the other thing doesn't work. Like I remember I rooted this phone and I installed some Chinese ROM on this, but then the SIM cards wouldn't work. I wasn't getting any signals. These kind of stuff shouldn't really happen on an Android handset, but they were happening on Lenovo phones. And that's why I eventually moved away, because I didn't like what I see and I went back to Samsung. So this was just I think 8 months of Lenovo experience for me. But that's the law of business, I guess. The obsolete ones die down and new ones take its place. But hey, Lenovo is trying some things with its Motorola lineup and they are seeing success there. So I think they finally managed to find what they're good at, I think. Well, here's hoping for the best. What are your thoughts on Lenovo? Have you ever owned any of their products? Do you think they should be investing as much time as they are in their foldable Motorola Razr lineup? Let me know in the comments down below, and with that said, until next time, take it easy and I'll see you soon. Cheers.